ahead and get started with the journalism panel now. Um, hello everyone. Welcome to our annual Communication Appreciation Day. My name is Mary Vaughn. I'm a senior communication major at UND with a leadership minor from Hastings, Minnesota. It's about 20 minutes south of the city's bordering Wisconsin. But we'd like to welcome you all to the conference today. It's sponsored by Northwestern Mutual. Currently, I'm the department campaign coordinator for the communication department, serving as one of your moderators today, doing the journalism session as well as advertising and public relations a bit later. Also, over the past year, we've been planning this kind of virtual career conference inspired by last year or 2 years ago's event. They came up with Communication Appreciation Day through COM 430, the advertising and PR class that Dr. Lee teaches as their event, and would like to conduct this as an annual event in coordination with the Alumni Mentorship Program to kind of overall showcase our awesome comm department and what a degree in communication can do for you. So at this time, if all the attendees could introduce yourselves in the chat box for attendance, it would be great. As well as you can just type your name and affiliation, whether that be a current job, if you're a high school student, or here at UND. In addition, just remember to mute yourselves until the end of the panel presentations, and then we'll open the floor for a Q&A. Also, in addition, for all the high school students here today and their families, we'd like to introduce the High School Scholarship Opportunity Program for all of you who are planning to attend UND with a declared major in communication. After reviewing the summaries, there'll be a $1,000 scholarship award rewarded to students that choose one or all of these prompts to do. I'll link that in the chat box in just a couple minutes. But if you're interested, if you're a high school student, please refer to that document for further instructions. So kind of to introduce today's event, we'll be having 6 sessions made up of 3 panel members each. They'll all be talking about their UND communication experience as alumni and going into their career paths. So all these great speakers today are UND communication department alumni themselves. They'll touch on their involvement, journeys, and what kind of led them to their careers where they are today. And as I mentioned before, part of this past year has not only been dedicated to this virtual career conference, but also the Alumni Mentorship Program, which was developed with UND COM alumni volunteering their time to mentor the younger undergraduate students for professional development and giving their expertise to sponsor that time and helping out our undergraduate students in the program. These students are matched with their alumni mentors through mutual contact and then introduced where they can continue their conversations as a mentor to these alumni. So they'll form those connections, start the conversation, but it was also kind of inspired by the COVID canceling many valuable student internships, especially this past summer. So the opportunities for professional growth and mentorship guidance, as well as networking connections, was introduced through this alumni mentorship program. But without further ado, we can take on the journalism session now. So please allow me to introduce our panels. First up, we'll have Saquon. She's a 2020 grad and a reporter working for WDAY News in Fargo. Following Say, we'll have Jacob Noterman, who's a 2018 grad and working as a political reporter for KFYR TV in Bismarck. And finally, our last panelist will be Riley Holloway, who's also a 2018 grad and working as a video journalist for Forbes Media in New York. After our three panels share their presentations with you, we'll move into a Q&A session. I will kind of segue into that so you guys know you can type the questions into the chat box. You could also send them to me privately if you feel comfortable, or you can unmute yourselves and just ask away. So Say, you are all good to start.
Okay, I'm gonna start sharing my screen. 1 second here. Okay, can you guys see this okay? Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to move you guys really quick. Okay. Can everyone see okay? I hope so. Okay, so Hello, I'm Say. I'm 21 years old. Like Mary said, I graduated last spring in 2020. I currently work as a TV news reporter in Fargo, and I did make a little presentation just so that I can hit on all the bullets. I know that my name in Zoom right now says Grace Pullman. That's my friend. I had to use her computer today because mine is having issues. So let's just get started. So first, I want to talk about the college grind a little bit. I know that many of you guys who are in college might be trying to look for internships, maybe looking for jobs, but I want to stress the experience and involvement. It is extremely vital. So I'll just kind of touch on what I did during college. So I was an opinion writer for Dakota Students, that's the school newspaper. I was an intern for UND Insider, which basically focuses a lot on production. It's a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. So if you look at the picture to your right there, there's a guy kind of filming, and there's me holding up the microphone, interviewing the coach. So it was a lot of the behind the scenes work, as in like filming and editing and things like that for UND Athletics, which was really cool. I also was a Fox Sports North sideline reporter. As you see in the picture, I got to interview coaches, go to press conferences, things like that. I was also the VP of Finance at Alpha Phi, and sorry guys, I was a PA announcer at UMN Crookston. So I did travel out of town to do that. And then I was a nanny. And I know that's a little bit weird that I put that on there, but I did that because I wanted to show you guys that I was working all of these internships and I had all of these positions on top of another part-time position where I actually did make some money. So this is how I kind of got the flow of income for college. And then I had all of those prior experiences just to have something to put on my resume before I started applying to jobs. So that was kind of cool. And then I want to go into the job hunt. I know that many of you guys right now are probably looking for internships, jobs. Trust me, I've been there. It's a struggle, but I promise it gets better. I started applying around late December, early January. I would apply to at least 3 jobs every single day. And when I mean I was applying to all across the country, I truly mean all across the country. New York City, Los Angeles, you name it. I was applying everywhere. And I knew before applying to these jobs, I wanted to go into news. However, I wasn't hearing a lot of things back, and that's because I didn't really have a lot of experience in a newsroom setting, nor did I have much experience writing for TV or news in general. So then I kind of opened up my path and I applied to a lot of public relations related positions. I was in the same class as Mary, and I was the director of my PR team in Dr. Lee's class. So fun. And COVID cases were really rising during this time. And of course, lockdowns were going into place. So it was really hard, and it was at times discouraging just because I felt like I was putting in so much work yet not hearing anything. And I felt like I wasn't, getting what I was hoping for. And even with that, I never gave up. And eventually I heard back from WDAY, which is where I currently work right now. So I want to talk about how I landed the interview. And this is something that many people struggle with. I even myself struggled with this a lot. I did a lot of practice before going into it, but you know how they say, connections are extremely important. And I think it's really true, because without a connection with my friend, I would have never been able to land this position, or at least I don't think so. So I was able to get in contact with the news director at WDAY. And if you look at my email, which I don't know if you guys can read it too well, but I basically summarized, hey, this is what I did in college. But I didn't go too much into detail because I already attached my resume. So they can always look at that. And I did, at the bottom, if you read closely there, I said, I truly don't believe that resumes and demo reels define me or anyone who's in the process of searching for jobs. I feel there's so much more to me, who I am and what I'm capable of. I'd love to get a shot in an interview or something more face-to-face. I believe that I do have what it takes to make a great addition to your station, and I hope you can consider interviewing me. And of course, I linked my demo reel and a resume there too, just so that I could provide something at least to show. And I wasn't extremely confident in my demo reel. And if you don't know what a reel is, it's basically just some of your best clips and combined together. And that's how news directors kind of see how you perform on air and things like that. But I wasn't extremely confident in it because when I was a sideline reporter with UND Insider / Fox Sports North, I didn't get as many opportunities as I wish I had. But I did have a few, which did make up for that demo reel there. So I did include that, but I did say, I think there's so much more that I can provide. And I don't think that it should be determined just off of a demo reel and a resume. So I got the interview. It went great, but I want to talk about it a little bit just because I had a pretty interesting interview experience. I remember my news director asked me, have you ever even wrote for TV, or have you ever even wrote for news? Because I kept pointing to that one fact that, I was a writer for the school newspaper, and I was extremely excited about that. But he laughed at me, and he said, writing for TV, writing for news is completely different than writing your college essays. And although writing college essays did really, really help me in writing, it was very different. TV writing is a very much condensed version of everything. So it was very different to adjust to that. But he offered me a position as a producer, and I had applied as a reporter. And he pointed to the fact that I didn't really know how to write for TV or anything like that yet. So I said no. I said, I came here for a reporter position. I really would like a shot at that. And then he told me, why don't you go back to UND and do a mock news story? And it was on UND and COVID-19. So he let me set the deadline. Of course, I picked the most basic college deadline you could think of, Sunday at midnight. And I had this interview on Friday. So I went back to UND. I did this mock news story. Keep in mind, I have never done this before. And I was so nervous, but I got it back to him by Sunday at midnight. And I emailed him and I said, first off, I just want to say thanks for, the interview and giving me a shot and letting me into the news field a little bit. Here's the story. And I also attached my sorority recruitment video that I edited just so that I could have him see that I did other things too. And I want to show you guys this mock news story. I'll just show you guys a little clip of it. But it's funny looking back at this now because I've just grown so much from this very amateur mock story, but here it is.
The North Dakota University System is recommending all campuses to avoid overseas travel until further notice, as coronavirus continues to spread at an alarming rate. As spring break season is coming up, UND administrators advise students to be aware of travel advisories and to get in the habit of frequently washing hands, as stated in the Centers for Disease Control guidelines. I'm currently sitting down here with a senior at UND, Lexi Winfrey. Now, Lexi, what are your thoughts on the university's response regarding the coronavirus?
Personally, I really appreciated that
So I'll just show that little clip. But you can see I was pretty new to it. And maybe it's not so obvious for you guys, but it is to me. And you guys will see that because I have other clips that I'll be showing you too.
The North Dakota...
Let's see. Okay, so here's the response I got after that mock news story. Basically, he said, thank you for sending this. I was very pleased. And after that, we did get on a call, and he was telling me we're interviewing and we're talking to a lot of other people right now who have years of experience. Let's just stay in contact and see how this goes. And of course, I was already back in Minneapolis, back at home with COVID lockdowns. And I was discouraged again, but I waited. I never gave up. And I did hear a response back from him and saying, we're looking for a live reporter. You'd be working the 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. shift. And that was like, wow, I cannot believe I'd be working all throughout the night. But I did eventually take it, and I did land the job. And I want to show you guys our first news promo that we just came out with.
The most watched morning news team in the region, WDAY First News. Plan your day with the most comprehensive weather forecast customized with you in mind. Stay informed and be the first to know about new and late-breaking developments with live updates all morning long. The most important news and weather from the most watched news team in the region. Start your mornings right with WDAY First News. Weekdays from 5 to 7.
All right, so that's First News. That's who I work with. Who you saw in that video was the meteorologist, Lydia. She's also a UND alum, and Drew, who is our anchor. One second, sorry guys. So I do want to touch on this because a newsroom consists of more than just anchors and reporters that you see on camera. So I myself am a reporter, but there's anchors who kind of sit behind the desk and they deliver the news for like 2 hours straight. I'm a reporter, so I go live from 5 to 7, but I only go live about 6 times a day. Producers, they're responsible for kind of tracking the developments to a story we've been following, or maybe some news that happened overnight, slugging out some national news, local news, whatever it is. They really are in charge of the content for the most part. Meteorologists, weather, photojournalists, photographers, but I like to call them photojournalists because they are journalists. And we also have audio graphics who oversee, the sound if they need to adjust mics or sound levels or things like that. There's also graphics. They're in charge of kind of what goes on the screen. And then we have directors who also oversee everything in the control room. And then we have assignment editors as well. So I want to touch on kind of a day in the life of what I do as a reporter. It's very different every single day, but basically I wake up at midnight, I eat breakfast, which consists of 2 pieces of toast. I get to work by about 1 in the morning. I know that's really early, but I've slowly adjusted. And then right when I get into work, we'll talk with anchors, producers about potential live shot ideas. So that could be something that a lot of people might be interested in or something that we can really showcase on air. I will write up 3 different live shot scripts by 3:30, and we try to do this thing called developing the story. It's called character development. So we try to add a new piece of information with every different script, and I present that. I do hair and makeup by about 3:45 a.m. No, we don't have anyone who does it for us. I don't even think anyone, that's not a thing. I get that question a lot, but I do it all by myself. And then we go on the air from 5 to 7. And then post-show responsibilities, they're very different every single day. Sometimes we might have to go to a press conference. Maybe that's a city commission meeting. It always depends. And on lucky days, I get a little break and I get to eat something. So I want to show you guys a little reporting clip. I know my hair looks horrendous in this, but it was so cold and we had some breaking news, and I'll just show you guys a small little clip really quick.
Happening right now, First News is staying on top of a water main break in Fargo. The call came in around 4 this morning near the intersection of 7th Street North and 6th Avenue North. That's about a block west of the North Broadway near the cathedral there. Our WDAY reporter Saquon was the first reporter on scene. Now, Say, I saw just minutes ago, it looked like the city of Fargo pulled up. I can see somebody behind you there. Have you gotten a chance to talk to them yet?
I did, Sarah. I actually was able to speak with someone, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But this water main has been gushing out nonstop all morning long. You mentioned, WDAY was the first and only crew when we arrived on scene at about 4:15 this morning. So it's been well over about 2 hours now that we've been here and watching this whole thing progress. Neighbors I saw were moving their cars out of the street. Do you guys remember when I said dispatch called the city's water department? Because that was the only way that they were going to be able to get this issue fixed, was calling the on-call guy there and having him over here. And just minutes ago, like you said, he showed up. He's here working on it right now, and I did get the chance to ask.
So that's a little bit of a clip there. It's funny because, sometimes we do have these scripts, but when it's breaking news situations like these, we usually just kind of jot down bullet points of what we can gather so far, and then we just do it. So I wasn't really going off of a script, but I had all the important details kind of bullet pointed and outlined so that I knew exactly what I wanted to touch on.
Happening right now.
Okay, so I also fill in anchor a lot, which means, if one of our anchors calls in sick or if they take some time off, I'm their go-to girl. I'll be behind the desk and filling in for them. So that looks a little bit different. I wake up at 10 p.m. I'll do full hair and makeup. Ladies, you know what I mean by this. Full hair makeup by 11:15 p.m. Get to work at midnight, and then I'll kind of take on the producing aspect a little bit, write up local, national health, business stories, a lot of pressing information there. And then I'll go through all the scripts. We usually do about 40 to 45 different stories every single morning. So I'll kind of go through those, catch any typos or any little errors and fix those up. And then I will, we'll discuss the show format for the day, as in how we want to attack the show. We want to start with obviously the most important information that a lot of viewers are going to want to know about. So we kind of go through the outline of that. We'll write teases after that, which is basically just teasing for what we're going to be talking about next. And then we go on the air from 5 to 7. So it's a 2-hour newscast. And then post-show for anchors, we tease for tomorrow's show. So those usually go on the air sometime later. It's recorded, and it'll be like, hey, tomorrow morning on First News, we're going to be talking to you guys about a different event that's happening. Join us from 5 to 7. That's an example of what that would be. And then we do recorded cut-ins. We usually pick like 2 local stories, and those air at 7:30 and then 8:30. So those are recorded as well, just for people who might have missed First News and might have not been able to catch the news that day. We just kind of talk about the 2 most important stories. And then we also do a Facebook Live starting at 8 in the morning. So we talk about 10 to 15 important stories. And then we also interact with viewers that way as well, because they usually like to comment something like good morning, or, they might have questions on something. So we usually like to interact with them that way. So here's a little clip of me anchoring behind the desk.
And new this morning, 7 people are facing criminal charges accused of operating an insurance fraud ring in North Dakota. WDAY looked at the court documents. The group would crash or damage each other's cars on purpose, then collect insurance money on it. And they did this for a year and a half and made more than $67,000. So here's the list of people involved. They're all from Fargo, and each are charged with conspiracy to commit an insurance fraud and illegally conducting an enterprise. Arrest warrants are active for 6 of these people. One suspect, Jamal Naida, has already had his first court appearance on the charges. Each suspect faces a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison.
So,
And new this morning,
so that's a little anchoring clip.
and new this morning.
That should be it. I hope you guys got a pretty good insight of what news is all about, or at least what I do in news. Again, like I kind of touched on, there's a lot of different positions in news besides just a reporter and an anchor. And I do have this slide up if you guys want to take any pictures or write this down. I told you guys this earlier, connections are extremely important. So I would love to help if you guys are in the job hunt yourselves. I know how stressful it can be, but don't give up. It's an extremely rewarding feeling once you land a job. So if you guys want to jot this down really quick, I would be happy to help in your job search, or with any questions you might have, you guys can connect with me there. Thank you.
Thank you, Say. Next, we're going to have Jacob. He's going to be introducing his slides.
Mary, can you help me?
Yeah.
I think, there we go. Perfect.
All right. And Jacob, you're all good to show yours.
All right, sweet. I'll get everything set up here. All right, so this is actually kind of fun for me because I get to ramble a little bit. Talking about what Say touched on, she is absolutely right. She touched on all of those different elements of the field that you really have to get into. When you look at journalism, you really have to look at it as multimedia. All right, that screen isn't going to work, so we're just going to stay on me. You really have to look at this job as a multimedia field. You got to know how to video produce. You have to know how to write. You have to know how to make social media content, because when it comes to journalism, or when it comes to media in general, you all know it as well as I do, platforms are constantly changing. We're getting all different kinds of ways on how to get information out there, because at the crux of it, that's what journalism and that's what communication is. Getting information to individuals who we think need to know what's going on. We're just going to quickly go over my credentials. I was a reporter for the Dakota Student. When I was a student at UND, I was a reporter for a then student-run news show called Studio One. I was a student in 2016. For those of you who were in North Dakota at the time, we were in a bit of a budget crisis then. So there were a lot of opportunities that were just lost due to budget reasons. And Studio One was one of those things. So that's how I got involved into the Dakota Student. That led to an internship with the Minnesota Wild, where I was a video producer intern. I don't know how well people know Minnesota, but I went to Burnsville High School, which is the school famous for the hockey hair videos. And then I went to UND, where we won the national championship my freshman year. In theory, I should know a lot about hockey. Heck, Brock Besser and I graduated high school in the exact same class, and he and I are currently competing to see who's going to be more famous at the end of the day. He's got a decent shot. But I should know a lot about hockey. But when I started working for the Minnesota Wild, I knew absolutely little about hockey. Didn't even know what offsides was. I showed up to the job. But that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make. Show what you can do. Learn how to take different facets of journalism, different facets of media, and just train yourself, because it's multi-applicable to a bunch of situations. I didn't know a single thing about hockey at all, but I managed to get a job with my hometown team simply because I knew how to do the job around the sport that we were talking about. Now let's kind of get into the situation that I find myself in, and that's the job search. Like I said, these talents are applicable to a bunch of different areas. And you really shouldn't be scared to go with the word internship or go with the word assistant in the title, even after graduation. Like I said, I worked for the Minnesota Wild as an intern, but that was after I had graduated from UND. And especially with how COVID shut a lot of stuff down, and a lot of companies, especially media companies, had to kind of downsize a little bit. Those more assistant or internship levels are in a bit more of a backlog, which means that there's a bunch of people who are qualified for spots, but they're so limited because companies are regrowing. Essentially, they're trying to restart a lot of their production, and they're rethinking how to do their news broadcasts, or they're rethinking how to print media, or whatever it may be. So having those different elements in your back pocket, knowing how to write, knowing how to shoot video in many, many different ways, it shows your adaptability. And now more than ever is the time to show off what it is that you're able to do with your adaptability. Let's focus specifically on broadcast journalism. When we all get into this job, a lot of us have that idea of being Lester Holt or Dan Rather, or being the main person at the desk at the really, really big jobs. Obviously, those are kind of pope jobs. It takes a lot to get to them. And the realistic look at it is you should look at it in market sizes. There are a bunch of smaller cities and there are a bunch of big cities out there that a lot of people want to get to. So how do you get to those bigger market areas? Well, there are really two ways of getting there. Either one, you kind of climb the ladder in a market way. You start small. You start in Bismarck, or you start in Fargo, where you have like 50 to 80,000 people in an area, and you just kind of climb your way up. Then you move to, let's say, Springfield, Illinois, and then you move to a larger area on the coast, and then maybe, just maybe, you find yourself in a Miami, or you find yourself in an LA. You climb that ladder by hopping around to different markets and really showing off what it is you're able to do. Because when you get to that point in your career where you're able to move around every 2 or 3 years and just thrive, just really show that you're able to communicate with people and get people the information that they need and really be nailing down that storytelling, it makes it easier for producers or for news stations to bring you on in larger markets, because they see you are capable of being more than adapting in any kind of situation. But then there's the other path you can take, which is kind of pushing your foot in the door, or kicking your foot in. I don't have a script or a teleprompter like most other jobs I have. You really kick your foot in a bigger market, and you just kind of climb within that one city. This is something that I saw in Minnesota, where there are people who are just video producers for a small town baseball team. And then they work their way up to being a big time journalist, or even sometimes an anchor in Minneapolis just later on, just because, like Say said, really valuing those connections really goes a very long way. And sometimes those connections isn't just going from market to market or learning who the hiring managers are in different cities. It's learning who the hiring managers are for the big city that you're already in. And to kind of get in that area, the big thing is having that reel ready to go, or going rather non-traditional and just shooting something yourself one day, or maybe over a course of time, writing some stuff. Really, when you want to get a job in this kind of field, you have to look at it entrepreneurially. You have to look at it as sometimes those opportunities aren't going to be there for you to take. In that, like I said, companies are kind of rebuilding. Teams are starting to restructure, which means that there just aren't that many internships or assistant positions for you to get into at the time. So how do you show your stuff? How do you get that experience? Sometimes you really just got to do it yourself. And you just start your own podcast, get your friends together, and just kind of comment on the news of the day or of the week. Start a website and just start taking photography every once in a while and just kind of posting your pictures every so often. Really, a lot of it boils down to just showing off what you're able to do. And sometimes you just had to do it yourself. And a lot of that means you got to spend a pretty penny in order to show off your professionalism. I'll show you something right here. I've got this fancy microphone. It cost me a few $100, but I basically am sitting in a homemade studio because I didn't know where my next job was going to come from or even what kind of job it was going to be. So you just kind of start your own thing, and maybe, just maybe, someone will pay you to do it. And that's kind of a fun thing to do, right? And that's kind of, to put a nice bow on everything, that's kind of the main point of not only the seminar or journalism, but for alumni like me to be able to reach out to all of you and tell you, constantly look for new ways to improve yourself and look for ways to show off what you're able to do. Because at the end of the day, you're going to be hired to show off someone else's work. You're going to be paid to get information that isn't your information to a public audience. So that's kind of my speech. Thank you for taking the time, and just keep pushing, guys. Honestly, it's a fun field. It's a fun job. Keep going. Just keep working at it. And it all comes easy at some point. I promise.
Thank you, Jacob. Next up, we're going to have Riley. He'll be our last panelist for the journalism. Riley, you are all good to go.
Hey guys, my name is Riley Halloway. I'm a video journalist at Forbes in New York City. I'm just going to share my screen here real quick. One sec. Go. There we go. Okay, can everybody see this? Yeah? Okay, so like I said, my name is Riley Halloway. I work for Forbes in New York. Many of you are probably familiar with Forbes as a brand, but it's more than just sort of a business magazine. In the past couple of years, it's really expanded into news media. We've really hired a lot of people for new journalism positions, fact checkers, everything like that. So my full title is a junior editorial producer and editor. I just say video journalist because that's a long title. And I cover a variety of topics from business and education to science. And we usually do it in the form of, for me, in sort of short form documentaries, anywhere from 4 to 12 minutes long. And then in addition to that, we do a lot of shoots, as Forbes is kind of known for, with celebrities, athletes, recording artists. I've been on shoots with Kevin Durant, Serena Williams, a lot of other famous people too, less so now because of the pandemic, obviously. So we're all working remotely. Our office in New York is closed, and it will be closed allegedly until October. And then more recently, I just got a show of mine that I pitched a few months ago, greenlit, and it's kind of under the sort of National Geographic kind of vibe. And it's focusing on the interesting and sometimes nefarious ways money moves around the world. And so the first episode just dropped on Friday, and it's exploring how the pandemic affected South Africa's illegal poaching industry. And so that took about a month to produce that story, with fact-checking, research, doing interviews at 2 a.m. Central Time and 9 a.m. South Africa time. So there was a variety of reporting challenges with that one. But there'll be 3 more episodes coming out as a pilot series, and if it does well, it'll get a season 2 at Forbes. So fingers crossed. And then some of the other stories I've worked on include some pandemic ones on the hidden cost of coronavirus testing, systemic racism, things like that too, hard to cure diseases, entrepreneurs. To talk a little bit about my time at UND here. So I studied communications with an emphasis in journalism. I got a minor in political science. I graduated in May of 2018, like the other panelists mentioned. My reporting beat in college tended to focus on systemic racism and hate groups. And so that was my sort of beat that I really felt good about reporting on and got a lot of experience in. I was also a member of this kind of low-key club at UND called the Breakfast Club, and it was an organization that met with faculty about the concerns that students had just twice a month. So it wasn't really time intensive. And then my sophomore year in the summer, I studied abroad in Stirling, Scotland. I took 2 journalism classes. That was really vital to me. I fell in love with travel, and now I travel all the time now. And it allowed me to open up doors for job opportunities and networking in the UK. So if you can study abroad, if you can swing it, if you get that opportunity, jump at it. It opens up literally a whole nother job market for you in dozens of countries, in addition to the US. So you have more options. And there are news organizations in the UK, in Europe, that are looking for American journalists to report on different subjects in the US and overseas. So don't count out jobs overseas for sure. After I graduated, I moved to Cape Town, South Africa. I lived there for about 3 months. I got an internship with an education company, and we made online courses for college and universities for you to take classes online. So if you wanted to take a class at Harvard, just one class, you could pay, $200, and you could take a class from a Harvard professor. I worked down there for 3 months. I got offered a job at the end of it. I ended up turning it down because I wanted to work in the journalism area, not the education video area. And when I got back, it took me about 5 months before I got the call from Forbes. I had interviews with BuzzFeed, Business Insider, and I was actually getting into my car to go back to, this was in March. I was getting back in my car to go to the UND Career Center because I felt like I was getting nowhere with my resume. And as I was climbing in the car, I got a call from Forbes. And so I got out and then talked with them and then got offered the position. It took a long time, and Jacob and Say mentioned this too, like it gets frustrating for months at a time when you're just, typing up cover letters and resumes and you're not getting anywhere. It can feel exhausting, it can feel draining, but you will get that call that one day and it will pay off. So just keep that in the back of your head at all times. Some advice that I want to give everybody that I wish I knew going into this. The first one I want to say is, do not be discouraged when a job listing says, we want 2 to 3 years of experience. They don't actually mean that. They're saying that so they can weed out the people that they think won't apply or aren't qualified. If it says 2 to 3, if it says 2 to 4, apply, just apply. Ignore what they say there. And Jacob and Say also touched on this too, but try to learn multiple skills. If you think you want to be a journalism writer for a print, magazine like the New York Times or the Grand Forks Herald or whatever level you're at, expand it beyond that. Do photography, do video, do editing, do cinematography, do makeup. You can do a bunch of different skills and you can put that on your resume, and that expands your job opportunities as well. So for starters, photojournalism is super easy to get into. A lot of us have iPhones and they take good photos now. Start covering stories in your local community, like Jacob mentioned as well. Start a podcast or interview people, or if you have a specific issue you're passionate about, do maybe a podcast about that or a quick episode about that for 3 minutes. And you don't even have to submit it as an assignment. Just post it somewhere on Facebook, on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. And the last thing I would say is build yourself sort of an online portfolio. I'd really advise that because everywhere I applied, like BuzzFeed and Business Insider and Forbes, they all asked for a link to a portfolio. And you can use websites like Wix and Squarespace to build out, sort of your portfolio. And while you're in college, just keep adding to that over time, whether it's a story you did on your own or if it's a story that was an assignment. Add it to your portfolio, like here's my photography, here's my videography, things like that. It's really useful, and it's a quick way for someone to say, you can say, hey, this is what I've got, this is my work, without writing out a whole resume list. They might just ask for the link. It's a good way to get yourself established and submit that to employers. It's sort of a day in the life too, to kind of wrap up mine here is, right now we're working remote, but if we were back in the office, I would work on a variety of social media videos breaking down news stories for the day. And these videos would be based on other reporters' stories. So they're basically short video versions of news stories that you would read on the Forbes website. So I'd make about 2 or 3 of those a day. And then I'd go work on a short form story that I've been interested in or working on, such as, the poaching story I did, or coronavirus testing. The next one I'm working on is about where $1 million ships go to die. And it's basically about where cruise ships and other large shipping containers end up after they can't float anymore. And it causes a lot of pollution issues and labor issues and civil rights issues. So we're working on that story now. But yeah, I think the overall theme here is to not box yourself in. You really need to try to find different skills. And I think if you have that iPhone, if you have an Android, whatever, take advantage of the camera, take advantage of your laptop, and use it to its full potential. Yeah, that's kind of all I got for my little speech here.
Thank you, Riley.
Yeah.
So next up, we can do a little Q&A. I'll ask first if there's anyone here that has a specific question they wanted to ask, either everyone or any specific person, 3 panelists we just heard from. If you do, you can type it in the chat or unmute yourself. Otherwise, we have a question that was sent in for you guys. And from the survey results, they asked how can I network within digital journalism? It's hard to make contacts or know how to pitch myself as I'm a freelancer. Say, Riley, Jacob, you can feel free to answer that.
Come on, Mr. Forbes, man, let us know.
That was a question that I had, and I know, and that's a really good question, because when I was in my senior year, I felt like I couldn't. I often thought of networking as getting to people above me, but another way to think about it that I learned later on is try to network laterally. Who's around you that's getting connections, and see if you can, like, if Jacob had a connection that he got, vertically from networking, I could network to him next to me and say, hey, can I get in contact with that person? Do they know somebody else? Don't always think of networking as finding people above you. Think of it as your peers around you. Where are they getting contacts? Where are they finding those people? So that's one way to think about it. And I think that another good way is to, again, build the portfolio, because pitching yourself has to be something more than just, hey, I'm a journalism student at UND. I'm a very good reporter and I can fact check. They want to see what you got. So I would do things like DM people that I thought might be looking for a freelancer. And I would just say, hey, saw you're looking for a freelancer. Here's my portfolio. I'm great at this, this, and this. Let me know what you think. And I would get hits back from them. They might DM you and say no, but that's the worst you're going to get is a no. So I think those are 2 good ways to think about pitching yourself.
And then there's one more. I think all 3 of you probably could answer this. What's the best career advice you've ever received?
I can start this one. I think it's funny because a lot of people, especially out of college, they join the news field and they oftentimes find themselves a little bit disappointed. And I've ran into people like this before, and I usually ask them why, and they say, it's not what I expected. The workload is a lot, and it's a little bit hard. I can't, the hours are hard. And my friend was in the same boat for a little while, and she had told me, I thought it was going to be a lot easier than this. And she said, I was really in it just to be on TV. Like, I thought it was going to be fun. Let me just say, before going into this, I had people tell me, especially my news director was the person who told me this. I hope you're not coming to the station to get just airtime. I hope you're not coming to the station just to be on TV. And I wasn't. I was extremely passionate about news. And he told me, if you want to be here, you need to make sure you are actively catching up with whatever happened, overnight, or make sure that you are up to date on the current events that are happening all around us, instead of just thinking about your performance on air. The performance, that's something that you can work on, but your passion for news is not something that can just grow overnight just because you're on TV. So I think it's really important that if you want to go into this career, make sure you're going into it with the right intentions, and make sure that you're going into it with a true passion for news. And if not, then start developing a passion for news. And you can only do that by familiarizing yourself with the content and making sure that you're following up on things like Twitter. And I think that's like really important because, a lot of college grads might have a different idea of news. It's not just being on TV. It's a lot more than that.
Thank you, Say. We have a question from the audience. It says, Akeem asked a question.
Hello, everyone. So I haven't actually asked the question as yet. I just raised my hand to indicate that I'd like to. So hello again. I'm from Jamaica. I am a news presenter at a radio station here in Jamaica. I also do social media management, a bit of voiceover work, and so on. So it's really great to be talking to you guys. I wanted to know, though, how feasible is it? Because, our style of journalism here in Jamaica is a bit different than, that of let's say, the United States of America, England, and other countries across the world. How feasible is it for a Caribbean broadcaster, for example, to transition into, let's say, American journalism? That's my question, and I guess anyone can answer that.
It's a little bit hard. Oh, sorry. I just have like one thing. I'll keep it short, but it's a little bit hard because I have personally never met anyone who transitioned that way. However, I will say my career goal, my dream in life is to work internationally. I'd like to be an international correspondent for a major news network like CNN. I think it's so awesome and it's intense, but I know that they have a lot of, I mean, everyone can use everyone, right? So the more insight you have from Jamaica or a different country, and the more that you're able to provide to another country, especially in national news, I think that's huge. It's something that it's kind of like high demand, short supply. Think of it that way. Like everyone's always looking for more people who are able to contribute something different. And I think it all starts out by reaching out and connecting with people, because you'd be surprised, I think, at the number of people who are in need of positions like that.
I was going to add too, one way, there's a couple ways, I think, pathways to kind of getting into the US journalism market. You know, you being in Jamaica, you know, you have sort of your finger on the pulse of issues in that country. And I think that if there's news organizations looking for someone to be sort of the correspondent in Jamaica to talk about issues in that country, that's a way to get in. So keep an eye out for listings of like, if there's some big news event that international news organizations are covering in Jamaica, they're going to want someone on the ground who's from there, who knows where to go, who knows how to get around, things like that. Another way might be to establish yourself as a contact for reporters who come into Jamaica. They might need someone on the ground who knows how to get to a location. Something as simple as that could get you an in. Another way would be to maybe do something like a series or a short like news piece on the experiences of Jamaican immigrants in the US. That could be a way to get into. Those are just a couple things that I thought of when, but that's a really good question, because I had the question the other way, which was I always wanted to do journalism in the UK. And so I always asked my UK professors how to get in over there. So yeah, no, I think those are two things they mentioned to me, and I think they work both ways. So.
Well, I just wanted to conclude by saying thank you to all our panel members. Next up, we're actually going to go right into the event planning, marketing, and sales session. So thank you guys for all coming. Thank you, Gray. Thank you, Say and Riley and Jacob, and then as well as all of our attendees. So I'll let Nicole take on event planning, marketing, and sales.
Can I add one thing real quick before, if anyone in the chat wants to like DM, you know, me, Jacob, or Say, or has questions, like don't be afraid to like hit us up on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or wherever, if you have, you know, job search questions or internship questions, things like that. So don't be afraid to reach out.
And let me ask, if I may, quickly, Akeem, you got any openings in Jamaica? And would you be receptive to a slightly older than average applicant?
Well, I mean, I recently started working at this radio station, Sun City 104.9 FM. I do the major news and midday news. In terms of openings, I'm not sure about that because they recently hired, but I know a lot of people would like to come out here. But I'll definitely keep in the loop if that's the case. And if you have any openings over there, feel free to hit me up as well. I've only been to California and Iowa. I've not really explored the US as yet, but I'd love to. So you can share your contact in the chat, and I'd love to keep in touch with anyone on the chat here.
Thank you.
I'm just happy to see that even seasoned veterans like Chuck Haga are trying to figure out what to do after session ends.
Seasoned, that's a nice word. Thank you.